1, 2, 3 test. Turn this on. One of the things that I like to do to start off is to find out what people's lives were like before they went into the service, so I can work against that.
All right.
Are you from Knoxville originally, or?
We moved here in February 1931 from Columbus, South Carolina. I was born in Columbus.
Oh, well.
And we had a big grocery store there, and Depression got it. Got us, got it too.
Get a lot of people.
So we came up here. My uncle, who owned Max Friedman Jewelers, brought us the whole family up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I been here ever since. Outside of those 39 months I was gone.
So how old were you when you came here at 31?
When I came here, let's say I'll be 69 in December, so let's back up there. 31, no. 57, 31, about 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. And so you went to school here and then went to UT?
No, I went to school here, played football at Knox High, had a scholarship to go to play football at Citadel in Charleston.
Oh, uh-huh.
And my dad lost a leg from diabetes. And the doctor told us it happened just about 2 months after I got the offer for a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor told us then that he'd have to amputate the other leg within a year. And it was a year to the day that he amputated the other leg. So to keep everything, although I had 2 other brothers and everything, we all had to work back in those days,
mm-hmm.
in the 30s, early 30s, and the late 30s. And so I just, instead of going to school, I went to work. My first job was in the fall of 38. I went to work at a pawn shop, which was owned by my uncle Max Friedman. It's on a Galen Depot.
Okay, I know where
across the street from Regis.
Mm-hmm.
On this right. There is a pawn shop there, but that wasn't ours. We had one on the corner, which was there was a hotel there.
Okay.
And we were in the lobby of the hotel. And I worked there till that was started early in 30. Well, when I graduated, went to work immediately. And then in the fall of 39, we opened up Max Friedman Jewelers. So you've seen the building
mm-hmm.
downtown.
Yeah.
Still got the facade on it and everything, just the way it was when we opened up. No, it wasn't. When we opened up, it was different because when I was in the Army, they had one big fire that didn't burn it down. But when I got back, about a year after I went back to work there, we had another fire during the night. And that's when we changed the whole building and rebuilt the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was about a 5-story building, which coincided with all the buildings on that block now. And everything collapsed into the basement. All the floors went shoom. In fact, in that building, there's a bank vault. At one time, back in, I guess, in the early 20s, before all the banks went broke, there was a bank in it. And so the original bank vault was there, which saved us a hell of a lot because at night we put up everything, the diamonds and everything mm-hmm. went in there, although we left the watches out. They floated down the street. The water was terrible.
So this was the big fire after the war? Or
yeah, after the war. That was one after the war, yeah. In fact, we had a sporting goods department in the basement run by a well-known sports fellow that played basketball. A fellow by the name of Tab Stuckey. He played basketball over at UT. And he ran our sporting goods department. And the fireman knocked down the back door and tried to let some of that water out. We lost basketball. Everything that floated out the back door. And people were picking it up all over. I think we did about it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a call about 2 o'clock in the morning from the ADT people, and they said, we've got a small fire. I think you ought to come downtown. Well, Magnolia was torn up. We live way out East Knoxville, out on Magnolia Avenue. and we couldn't come up Magnolia. It was all torn up. They were widening at the time, so we had to come up Fifth Avenue. And when we hit Knoxville, old Knoxville High over there on Fifth, we could see the flames going straight up there.
The little
And
fire.
that night, little
wasn't so
fire,
bad.
right? It was something.
Did your other brothers go in the service too? Or?
No, neither one of them. Both were turned down. Both were turned down. My oldest brother, I forget what his problem was, and my next oldest brother, we had only, well, there was 5 kids in the family. 3 of us still living. A sister and Billig, who was the oldest one, and I was the youngest boy. We had a younger sister who was 5. But they never went. They got as far as Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. But they was saying 4F.
Mm-hmm.
When I went in, I think I told you on the phone, they turned me down for over a year, about a year and a half, for bum legs, bum feet, from football.
Did you try to get into the Army or Navy or
No.
Air Force? Or?
I just ride until they called me. And one doctor that I went to see, well, the board sent me to see, one doctor who turned me down. And I asked him what I could do about these bad feet of mine. He said, well, he said, you want to really know? I said, well, sure, I want to know. I said, and so he said, well, we can take your foot and split it from the toe all the way to the heel and reach underneath on this side and bring some muscles down and tie them on this side to build your feet back up and do some arches. I said, how long will that take? He said, well, it's been 7 months, 9 months, a year. I said, that's enough.
I'll pass.
I'll pass. So at that time, I was with Max Friedman Jewelers. After we opened the store in '39 until when they finally took me in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, they were asking me, what I thought I could do. What I told them what my experience had been in retail selling. I mean, retail selling. Dollar down, dollar a week at that time. That's what it used to be 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We had things that we sold for $quarter down, quarter a week, 50 cents, $1 on up. And so I told them all what I had done down through the years, where it worked and everything. He said, well, we could use you somewhere. I said, fine. That's when I wound up in the infantry. When we left Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia.
What year was that? Was that 40?
46, I think. No, not 46.
No.
Let's see, it's in here somewhere when I was in Dutch. Damn Princess, no? Another time, I thought the other day, I see my magnifying glass. 42.
42.
42, right. 42. In fact, I went down on my birthday, December the 6th, 42. And
almost exactly a year after Pearl Harbor.
That's right. They turned me down that year, plus further back when I first started the situation. And first incident we had was riding the damn troop train from Fort Oglethorpe to Camp Phillips, Kansas. And they had 2 people laying sleeping in the bottom bunk and one in the top. So they had me assigned with one other guy. So I told the other fellow, I gave him the choice. I said, I'll give either one of you a couple dollars if you let me have the upper bunk by myself. Because I'm not used to sleeping with anybody. So they did. And we got out to Camp Phillips, Kansas. They gave us an exam. And one of those 2 head crabs. They had shaved them both good. So I got lucky there.
Mm-hmm.
But we came into Salina, Kansas. And then this place with a little hole in the wall. We were out in the country. And they put us, of course, in Army trucks and took us to camp. And I saw kids walking down the street, knock knees, pigeon-toed, everything. I said, this must be the hellhole down at me. It's on everybody. And in our outfit, we had a guy big, husky, strong guy, a farmer from Minnesota. And he, when the first week we got there, our hike, so-called hike, was around the barracks. And we got into the barracks, and doctors came in, kept our feet. That poor boy, his shoes was nothing but solid blood. So they sent him to the on sick call. And about a week later, he was back, feet was good. Next hike we took, the next week, every week they progressed distance. And we went on a mile hike, came back, his feet was stinging, and full of blood, socks, everything. And this went on finally after we were up to about 5 miles, and he had the same damn thing. They finally discharged him. Hey, husky Bruce. I said, I'm not. Hell, did you work out on a farm? He said, I just took it easy. I said, sir, you had to walk. That's a cinch. Yeah, it's pitiful. Like I told you on the phone, I stayed in the infantry until, well, I was in there about 8 or 9 months, and they were getting our unit ready to go. Not in the division, the whole division was there, 94th Infantry Division. They were getting us ready to go overseas for the D-Day. And I woke up one morning, couldn't snow islands around there, and out there, piled all over the place. And I woke up and couldn't get my shoe on. My foot, one foot is swollen like that. So I walked barefooted to sick call, which is about 6 blocks away. And the non-com lifted my foot and handed me 2 APCs. He said, go back to duty. And I can't get my shoe on. And he said, go on somewhere. So I went back to barracks. And I had a high fever, and they took the 2 APCs. And next morning, the other foot caught up with the first foot. And I went back on sick call, and that same one tried to give me 2 more APC tablets. I said, hell, I didn't sleep all night with these feet aching. I got to see the doctor, not you. And they finally let me see the doctor, and he put me immediately in the hospital. And that time, I guess that was the only treatment they had for the damn thing. They had me in a tent, my feet anyway, in a tent. And my feet were wrapped in bandages, and about every 10 minutes, the orderly came in and poured saline solution all over the feet. And the tent had lights in it to bake it. And just kept getting worse, and I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't use a goddamn bedpan to save my life. So every night when the lights went out, I'd hop from bed to bed to the latrine and back. Thank goodness it was right there in the ward. And while I was there, my division went overseas. I later learned that my company, out of my company, they lost 90% of them in that D-Day invasion. So I guess God was smiling on me.
Indeed, sounds like it.
Yeah.
You wonder how things like that happen, the chances.
Then they, in the ward, finally got to the point, the damn skin was so goddamn tight. The doctor, so the skin got so damn tight, there wasn't nothing they could do. So right in the ward's bed, they operated on it. Cut both of them open. I still got the scars on top of my feet. And they groove hit the ceiling. It was so tight, straight up.
Just an infection had built in?
I'll tell you, the story that he better than that was, I never had another case until I got home. And I got married and everything, getting ahead of the story, but anyway, my wife was visiting her folks in Cleveland, Ohio. And I got sick in the jewelry store. I'd gone back to work there. And called my doctor, and he says, come on over, I'll look at it right now. And I went over there, and he slapped me in the hospital immediately. His feet were swelling again. And he gave me treating us in the hospital. I wouldn't call my wife. In fact, I got out of the hospital a couple of days later before she got home. Never did tell her the first time. About 6 months later, the same damn thing happened. And she slapped me right in the hospital. Well, she was home then. And so I asked him, I said, what in the hell can this be? So he explained to me, I had told him about this episode in the Army. He said, Joe, that type of infection that you had, you could get hit on the arm, shoulder, head, anywhere, and it'd break out in that foot again, either one of those 2 feet again. So he gave me shots every day for 3 months, then twice a week, and then once a week for the whole year. And knock on wood, never came back. But he advised me to apply for a pension because it was related in the Army. Well, he called it one thing medically, and the Veterans Administration called it something else. And he showed me in the damn medical book the same identical thing, but they never do anything about it. But knock on wood, I never had any problems again. But when I finally got out of the hospital, my division was gone overseas, so they put me in the quartermaster court by a dead station complement, and I worked there in the warehouses there under some civilians. It was so goddamn hot in those damn things. There were nothing but tar paper warehouses with tin roofs, and that Kansas sun. I'm getting ahead of the story. I should have gone back some more. On the hikes, when in the Army, even with my bum legs and bum feet, we'd go on a 35-mile hike. And my company commander had bad legs, too. So we brought up the rear at all hikes. We never did it. We never caught up with them too much, but we'd make it back eventually. And in Kansas, the barracks, the Army, when I was still with the division, the barracks were about a block away from the latrine. And they were nothing but tar paper shacks. And during the winter, if it snowed, we had to dig everybody out of the in bunks because the snow stitched it in through the doors. And if they had to go to the goddamn bathroom, the idiots, instead of going through the snow, they just right in the pots that were all on a pot belly stove that heated the darn place. And what a heat stink. And during the summer, it was even worse than that out there in Kansas. They used to have the sandstorms. And if we were out on bivouac 25, 30 miles out, we could see over the camp the dust storms coming. But one thing about Kansas, I always said, if it went that way one day, it came back this way the other day, and even things off. But we'd get back from that hike late in the afternoon after a 35-mile hike and have to dig out we had to take everything completely out of the barracks. That happened 6, 7 times. Get all the dust out, sweep the barracks down, and bring everything back in, the cots and all that, clothes and everything. There's nothing but piles of dirt. The beds had dust like that on. It was a mess. So then when I got into the station complement, it was the goddamn hot. It must have been 120 in those warehouses. And we had offices. So we came up with the idea we were going to make ourselves a cooler. We had the shop build us a container made out of galvanized iron that would hold a 100-pound block of ice. We got an old radiator from the car and got a fan behind the radiator and got a pump that pumped the water through the radiator through the ice and back, just kept circling. The only trouble with damn 100-pound ice and that heat would last about 15, 20 minutes. That didn't work.
Good idea, though.
Yeah, we had a hell of an idea on that damn thing. And then later on, we got a lot of the German prisoners of war to help us there. And they'd go on a strike every day if they thought something they were doing pertained to something that was detrimental to the Germans, like loading ammunition or something like that, although we never had any ammunition there. All we had was tents and things like that. But the company, the camp commander, if they go on a strike, no matter what the weather was, rain, snow, sleet, hail, he'd make them stay outside in a bunch, out in the thing. And it wouldn't feed them either. And one time they stayed, oh hell, it was the second day, so he finally felt sorry for them. So he threw loaves of bread around them. And the minute they'd step out to try to reach for the bread, somebody'd shoot it, knock it away. They finally capitulated and went back to work. But I, being Jewish language or Hebrew is very, very close to German. A lot of the stuff, and they'd be over in the corner talking, and I'd go over and tell them what they were talking about. A lot of the stuff they couldn't understand Howler and German so fast. I never did tell them. We outfitted after the 94th. I don't remember the other two divisions again, what numbers they were, but we outfitted two more to send them overseas. And one day we got a order down from company headquarters. The first division we sent over, we had to strip them completely of everything they owned and everything they had, except their personal stuff. All the clothing, everything they had like that. We wound up with one tremendous warehouse with nothing but towels from hotels all over the country. So we didn't know what the hell to do with them damn things. And finally, we got an order down from Washington to separate all those damn things into different hotels and ship it back to whatever hotels we could figure out. It was a hell of a mess. Then after we outfitted those two divisions, word came down to close Camp Phillips completely. So we had to take everything out of the damn barracks, all the barracks throughout the whole camp, and store them in those warehouses.
It's an enormous job.
Oh, it took us several months to do all that. We had to store the beds in one warehouse, the mattresses in another, and everything else. And then we had to go through all the day rooms from all those outfits that had left, and everything that wasn't GI issue. Our bunch split up. I sent home telehead machines, typewriters, golf clubs, everything that was there that they couldn't take with them. If we'd left it, it'd been dead anyway. So we all had a good time shipping stuff home. And after we did all that, then they decided that we were fit. All a bunch of hell, half of them crippled, couldn't see, couldn't do nothing. We're going overseas to the Orient, and they were going to ship us to Fort Warren, Wyoming. So first they were going to examine us before we left. So one of my buddies got up in there, and the first thing they asked him to do the eye test. Just like that, read it perfect. So the kid that was doing the testing says 20/20, 20/20. And this guy took out his glass eye and put it in front of him and says, how can I be 20/20 with a glass eye? How he got in the damn army in the first place, I don't know. Crazy out there, some of the things. So we went to Fort Warren from there. By that time, I was what was that? Sergeant. And when we got to Fort Warren, I think I told them I was standing in line being examined again. They just got through examining us the week before, examining us again. And a captain came by that I'd known at Fort Warren, and he says, yes, he says, what are you doing? I told him, we're getting ready to go overseas. I'll have a little training here, and we're going to the Orient. He said, okay, I'll see you. Well, it wasn't 5 minutes later, my name came over the loudspeaker, and he said, that they had to report to this captain, which I did. When I walked in, he said, you really want to go overseas? I said, he said, well, stay here with me. I said, fine, I'm ready. So he got me transferred out of that bunch into his bunch. And I stayed there with him the rest of the time until I got out of the Army. And eventually I was his right-hand man. I was made master sergeant. And I was the non-com in charge of the warehouses, and he was the officer in charge of the warehouses. We had about 8 big warehouses. We had to take inventory every week. Damnedest thing ever seen. We take inventory once a week. If any items in the inventory were over our stated quota that we were supposed to have, we had to report it to Kansas City Depot. Time they went to the Kansas City Depot and came back to us with their requisition, to requisition everything that we were over on. We were below what we were supposed to have, but we still had to ship what they requested. So next week we had to turn right around and reorder the same damn thing. I always said I'd love to have had the money that was spent in transportation to the depot and back and forth, the same damn stuff going back and forth. It was a mess. And I've got a lot of others. Let's see if my other notes.
One of the things that you mentioned raised a question in my mind. In the military, did you find much evidence of anti-Semitism?
No, very good. No, when I was still in the 94th Infantry Division, the worst smell we ever had was in pup tents out in 115-degree weather. The Italian boy and I, he was from New York, same day out in the field and all that heat, he received a long Italian salami from home, and I got a big Hebrew Jewish salami. Smelled up the whole goddamn place area for a long time.
A lot of garlic.
But really didn't have much, because I was a friend of mine was a Catholic, and he asked me to be a usher at his wedding right on the base, which I was. Another friend, Baptist, I was to usher at his wedding and things like that. So I really didn't find too many. Some areas I understand it did, but where I was at, it didn't. And all the things. And I think there's quite a few things I know that went on that I didn't.
Did you write home very regularly?
At least once a week.
They didn't save the letters by any chance?
No, that was big. I don't know. My mother, she never saved it. In fact, she even gave away a damn big stamp place while I was gone there. But after D-Day and then later on when I came down, if you had so many months in service, you could apply for discharge if you were not in an essential position. So my desk was right next to the captain, so I wrote my own discharge papers and put them over there. And threw them in a basket on his desk. We didn't talk to each other for about a week till he finally started. Then I had friends, and they wanted to send me from Cheyenne back to Chinook, somewhere around Chinook Field up in Illinois, somewhere to be discharged. But I had good friends in the discharge class. I said, hell, I want to travel pay from down here in Colorado. So I got out in Colorado and then had travel pay from Colorado back home.
Did you ever think about going regular and staying in the service?
No. That was long enough. I did apply for OCS, and then after they'd approved it, I decided to stay where I was as a master sergeant. I had more fun than they were, and going through all that stuff. Whenever any of those divisions went overseas, even the officers would have to turn in all their old stuff or leave it there or ship it home and buy everything brand new from the post. They had to pay for all their stuff, clothing and everything, but they had to buy everything brand new to go with them. We took turns at Fort Warren. We took turns meeting troop trains, either going to the West Coast and going to the Orient, or going the other way. And we'd have to meet them no matter what time it was, no matter how deep the snow was or how cold it was. We'd have to meet them during the night and supply them with stuff they needed. on the train, food and stuff like that. We, all the non-coms took turns doing that. They'd go down to motor pool, get a Jeep, load it up, middle of the night, and go down. But it was much better at Fort Warren because we were in the old original barracks, which was brick. And I woke up one day, the windows were up high. I woke up one day, July the 4th, awful bright outside for 5 o'clock in the morning. Looked out there, 10 inches of snow. July the 4th, World War. It was nasty.
South Carolina, Tennessee, boy, you hardly believe that.
But
Snow
all
on
that
the
stuff
4th
out
of July.
there, right out, we had, you know, it was being in the quartermaster corps like that, we had a lot of fun. I played on the camp basketball team back then, because hell, back then 6'1", I was pretty tall compared to what they are today. So I wouldn't have been in a good guard back now. We were talking today at the City Salesman Club. I'm treasurer of the City Sales, as president of the City Sales. And we were talking about some of the old basketball games we used to play with. So this was before the war. Before went in the late 30s, and we used to go all the way up to Johnson Bible College to play basketball. They had a gym that was heated by a pot-belly stove at each end. The sides of the gym, you could see the snow out on the ground right through the sides of the building, and we'd have to dress a block away and walk through the snow to the gym. Good old days ago. Knoxville High, when I played I was on the football team over there and the track team. Not running, throwing shot put. Because I weighed more then than I do now. Right now I weigh about 215. When I played football in high school, I weighed about 250.
Ooh, real big for those
But
days.
I was the second fastest man on the line. When I went in the Army, when I left here, that December the 6th, when they weighed me in at Fort Oglethorpe, I weighed 258 strips. 13 weeks later, when I came home, basic training, I weighed 192 in 13 weeks. But I've met hot sun and all the things we went through. I joined, I was in the, what the hell, they didn't call it the National Guard. They had an outfit here.
State troops or state?
Some kind of outfit we had here that Ed Chavan's from Chavan's Lumber Company at that time was the company commander. And we met twice a week. We'd march from our company headquarters was in the, let's see, about the 800 block of Day Street upstairs in one half the building. And we had uniforms, had everything. We'd march maybe a mile out and a mile back. That was the extent of it back then.
But you had more experience than some who came out.
Oh, yeah. Fort Warren, I'll never forget the first time I ever rode an airplane. At Fort Warren, they had a air base right next to us. And I went out there one morning. I was going home on furlough, and I bummed a ride. Well, they put me on an Army transport. They were supposed to go from Cheyenne to Chanute-Field, Illinois. And I knew I could go from Chanute right into Chicago and catch a train to Knoxville. And the only thing in those airplanes at that time, down each side, a long row was bucket seats. Well, in the middle, they had piled up with duffel bags full of stuff they were transporting, supposedly to Chanute-Field. And we wound up in Kansas. I got off the got off that plane and hit the runway and fell flat on my ass. It was nothing but a sheet of ice. And had it go from Topeka, Kansas, to get home. From Topeka, Kansas, to Kansas City. Had to stand up in a baggage car all the way to Kansas City. In Kansas City, I caught a train from Kansas City to St. Louis. From St. Louis, I caught a train to Nashville, and then to Chattanooga, and caught a bus from Chattanooga back to Knoxville.
It's a long ways home.
And those trains in those days, they were the air conditioning. They knew about air conditioning. Damn things were hot, God, in the summertime. And you raised the windows, and all you got was the soot was coming through. By the time you got to the next stop, you had to shower and clean up all the things to do.
I imagine in the service, one of the things they say about World War II is that people met a lot of different kinds of folks that they hadn't run across before.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Hell, our outfit was from all over the country. Like I said, a kid from Minnesota that was bad, New York, we had them from New York, had them all over. And there were very few from Knoxville went with me off in Fort Oglethorpe. I think it must have been about 50 of us all that went to Camp Phillips. The only thing I ever figured out, things must have been looking pretty bad if they took me into the infantry. Let's see, was the fair in Vancouver? It was 2 years ago. The World Fair in Vancouver.
3 maybe.
3 years. My wife and I left here and drove to Dallas, Texas, where my daughter and my 2 granddaughters live. That time, let's see, one of them was 12, 13. He was 12 or 13, and the youngest one is 4 years younger. Well, we picked them up in Dallas and drove all the way. We went there to Houston, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, El Paso, Texas, visiting friends and relatives. Then we cut out for the West Coast and went to California to visit relatives. And then we worked our way up the coast to visit. We stopped in Portland, Oregon, and I called. I looked in the phone book. Hadn't seen the guy since we were discharged at Fort Warren, Wyoming. Called him on the phone. He came running over to the motel and picked us up. His family owned a big department store in Portland when he was young. He inherited the whole thing. But by this time, he'd already sold out and was working for the government, traveling overseas, doing things for them. That did say what. But we spent that night with them. That evening, let's put it that way, because we had already checked in a motel. But he recognized me the minute I walked in the lobby of the hotel, and I recognized him. And I used to spend every Saturday and Sunday, with he and his wife and son. Because he was wealthy then. He probably owned a department store and everything. So he had a little house about 2 blocks out of the gate, the main gate of Fort Warren. And he had a 1-bedroom house, but they bought a cot for me. And I spent every weekend with them, every Saturday and Sunday.
Must have been good to get together. How long had it been between times?
From 1946 till 2 years ago. And funny, my wife had met him. I hadn't seen him in all that time, but I had a nephew that was working in Portland, and he was when I heard that he was living in California, and he was moving up to Portland to go to school up there, so I gave him the name of this friend of mine, and they took him in like a little kid. I mean, they took care of him and everything, and he decided to get married. So they gave the rehearsal dinner and everything, and all because of me. I guess being good friends down through the years. So my wife flew out to California and then drove from California up to Portland with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, whose son there was. So she met them at that time. 30 minutes before the wedding, they decided to call it off after all that trip all the way to California. So that's kids. Anyway, we went from Portland up to Seattle, Washington, then to the World's Fair for about 5 days, then then coming back, we came across Washington, Idaho, Montana, the Yellowstone National Park. Then from Yellowstone, we went down to Cheyenne. I didn't have that with me. They wouldn't let me on the base. They said still some of the old buildings, some of the old buildings were still there. I could have, if I'd have had the discharge papers, I'd have been able to go on the base.
Mm.
So they wouldn't let me on. The MP said, no, we're sorry. So that was it. And on purpose, I went to Cheyenne to see what it was like. But it was completely changed, of course. Where the rodeo, the annual rodeo out there used to be right outside the gate of the post. Hell, that was interstate now, so they had moved that a little. Then from there, we went down to Colorado Springs and saw the Olympic Village and everything. Then we cut across Kansas. I wanted to go to Salina to see what was there. Well, we stopped at a motel there, and I asked the desk clerk, I said, can you tell me where Camp Phillips is? She said, what? She said, I never heard of Camp Phillips yet. Never could find out where the hell it was at and everything. You know, after all those years, you have no idea. That's right. We were out of town about, I'd say about 8 or 10 miles outside of Salina. And we'd go in on weekends and things like that. But, the streets with dirt and everything practically in Salina at that time. But growing up quite a bit.
Any trouble between soldiers and townies in Salina? Or?
We never had any problems. Got along very well. We used to drive from, if we could get enough gasoline stamps among us, one of the fellows had a car, and we'd drive down to Denver. It was about 80 miles to Denver, I think, something like that. So we were in Denver several times during the time I was at Fort Warren. Like I say, we had to scrape up enough gas coupons to go. We didn't stop. We went through Denver coming back. We covered 9,000 miles in about 7 weeks. But yet we never drove. The longest we ever drove was about 400 miles. The shortest was about 200, depending on what we were doing next day. Sitting here trying to think of other stuff that happened during the wartime, though. We had towards the end of the war, we had football teams. Quite a few of the camps had forts. Not the camps, they were strictly the forts. Fort Warren had a football team. And they had all university players that I worked out with them a couple times. Never did play. But we had one guy that went to the University of Alabama, played 3 years at Alabama. Then he got drafted, so he played there for 2 years. And he got out of school. I think he played another 2 or 3 years at the University of Wyoming.
Made a career out of playing college ball.
Almost, right. I can't remember his name. There's some hell of a basketball players out there at Fort Warren. They had a heck of a ball club there in basketball, too. In fact, 1 or 2 of them wound up in the pros. Yeah, our base commander at Fort Warren and our head chef, shall I call it, mess sergeant, had been in the Army together for about, I guess they were together about 20 years or more. So, the commander was avid huntsman. And they would go out and they'd go up into Montana and everywhere and shoot deer and buffalo and everything. And everything that came back was put in our mess hall for him to take care of. So if the non-coms would come through at night and didn't like what he had on the menu, why we'd come back later, he'd fix us venison steaks, anything.
Sounds like on balance, it wasn't too bad a duty.
No, it wasn't. No, I was just putting in the time. That's all. That's about what it amounted to, really. I don't think I left out everything. You try to think of different things that happened.
You'll think of some tonight, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
When you came back, you went back to work in the jewelry store?
Right
or?
away, yeah. I went back to the jewelry store the week I got back, and that was in '46. I met my wife to be. Her twin brother was stationed here at UT in naval training or something during the war.
They had a program like that.
That's right, and he married a Knoxville girl in June of '46. His twin sister came down for the wedding, and we had one date, and a blind date, and then we were together at the wedding, and she left the next morning, and we corresponded on, that was in June.